You're checking out the Investor Shed podcast with Nick Beveridge and Jeremy Kitchen. They're on the path to financial freedom and they're taking their community with them. Stay tuned for the best free real estate investing advice on the internet.
Welcome to the Investor Shed podcast. I'm Nick Beveridge here with my fantastic co-host, Jeremy DeWellen Kitchen. Good morning.
Top of the morning, it's me, Mr. Fantastic, even though nobody calls me that, and that's okay. How are you doing today, Nick?
Pretty damn good. Not fantastic like you, but I'm pretty damn good.
And speaking of pretty damn good, we got a pretty damn good episode today with Cecilia Boswell on the show.
Yes, we pretty damn good do. You guys are going to love it. Cecilia started off with house hacking, and she grew a pretty nice sized portfolio of rentals, and she shares her experience. You guys are just going to love it. You're going to love it. What did you learn today?
I thought it was a really great episode. Like you said, she started house hacking. She's been slow and steady in the real estate world, which is great to hear because she didn't get over leveraged. She just did what she knew would work, and it was just really cool hearing her story. So
yes, I love Cecilia, and you guys are going to love her too. So tune in, grab an apple, eat well today. Bite into this. You're going to love it. All right, welcome back to the Investor Shed podcast. My name is Nick Beveridge. I am here with my co-host, Jeremy Kitchen. Good morning.
Top of the morning to you, lad. It is St. Patty's Day, but by the time this comes out, it won't be.
We need to stop referencing when it is.
Yeah, the year's 1997 right now. But we have our guest with us today. We have Cecilia Boswell. Cecilia, thank you so much for joining us on the Investor Shed podcast. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Cecilia, we've been in contact for a little bit. Obviously, she's been local in our area, and we thought it'd be a really good idea to get her take on investing on the Investor Shed. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started into real estate investing?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in LA. I was raised by a single mom, so finances were just always kind of tight growing up, and that's definitely been a big motivating factor for me to get into real estate and try to build financial security. So I started working as soon as I could in high school and then went to college, met my husband in college. And then after graduating, we took some time off to travel. And then in 2014, we moved to Seattle. And I've pretty much been doing like the W-2 corporate job thing since then, and then growing a real estate portfolio along the way. So we started investing in real estate in 2015. We started out house hacking, and since then have mainly been doing small multifamily value add projects. We've also done some out-of-state investing, Airbnb, and of course house hacking as well along the way. And in 2021, we moved to Spokane, and we are house hacking on we have a small hobby farm property with an ADU that we rent out on Airbnb. So that's been kind of a fun house hack.
Awesome. Okay, so let's take a step back. What actually got you first interested in real estate, or how did you hear about real estate investing? What made you want to house hack and go from there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I kind of got into just real estate in general pretty early. Like as a teenager, I was just kind of looking for where are opportunities that I can, work and try to gain as much professional experience as possible as soon as I could. And I found out that you could get a real estate license when you're 18. So I did that, and I was just always trying to put myself out there and meet and find out about career opportunities. And there was a career fair at my high school, and there was a realtor that like had a booth there and was just kind of talking about what she did. And I thought that was really interesting. So I kept in touch with her. And then after graduating high school, she was looking for a real estate assistant, and I reached out and was interested and started doing that. So I had a real estate license, was working as a real estate assistant, and just kind of learning a little bit about real estate on the residential and the brokerage side. Yeah, and then in college, again, just trying to kind of realize like real estate was interesting to me and wanted to get, more experience. And I was able to get a job as an assistant property manager. So I was doing that while going to school. And then once I graduated college and So again, was still in kind of California, and then my husband and I were traveling, and then moved to Seattle. And one of the reasons I definitely wanted to get out of California was, LA, like real estate is super expensive, and I just kind of knew right away it was going to be really hard to buy anything there. So we were looking for areas where it would be feasible to be able to buy property. um, and just kind of from there just started doing a lot of research online, found like bigger pockets, and just reading other real estate content, and started going to meetups as well. So just kind of like always like looking and for opportunities, and listening to other people, and that kind of gave us the idea to try to find either like a single family home that we could fix up and sort of do, just be able to get in with low money down, and find something we could fix up, or like ideally like a duplex. And so we were looking, and this was, I guess, like 2014, 2015 in Seattle. And it was, I mean, there were still opportunities, but, definitely started to get a little more competitive. And I remember we would put in offers on duplexes, and there'd be like 25 offers or something like that. So it was definitely took some time for us to find the right opportunity. And then, of course, we were doing FHA financing, trying to, get in with as little as possible,
Sure.
so that made it
Yeah.
a little more challenging to be competitive with our offer. But we did end up finding a duplex in 2015 that we got our offer accepted on, and that was our first property.
Yeah. So I do want to touch on Seattle and what that market was like, because that was an unusual time for a market to be that hot in the country,
Mm.
2014, 2015. But I do remember Seattle was like insane. But if we could we take a step back, if you don't mind, I'm curious, what was it like working with a Los Angeles realtor? Did you have any funny stories, or did you learn much working for an agent doing business in the Los Angeles area? And what was that like?
It was an interesting experience, and maybe a little bit unusual, kind of looking back on it. I mean, this was 2009, so obviously, like, kind of the bottom of the market, even, yeah, even in LA.
Yeah, on the way down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I just remember, hearing people, other agents in the office talking about, how, what a crazy time it was. And it wasn't, didn't used to be like this. And I had no idea. I mean, it was just, that's all I knew at the time.
That's about the time I got introduced to real estate was 2008, 2009 is when I bought my first house, and I was just like, man, is it always like this? This is hard.
Yeah, yeah, it's just
um
kind of
but go
crazy.
ahead.
And
Sorry to interrupt you there.
oh, no worries. Yeah, I was kind of, I was thinking the same thing, and it's just like kind of like the vibe in like the real estate office was just kind of like I don't know, sad, or like kind
Yep.
of,
I remember
yeah.
that too.
And I just, kind of thought that was normal. But yeah, so I did, the agent that I worked with, it was kind of definitely an upscale area in LA. So I just remember, going to open houses of these multi-million dollar properties, and just really, kind of crazy. I remember we had a client that was looking at a property, and it ended up being a property that Kim Kardashian bought later on. So just kind of some
Oh
Oh
wow.
funny
wow.
celebrity, yeah, some funny celebrity real estate stories from those LA days.
I'm curious then, because this was a sad time, slow time. Um, because it was a slow time, why did this real estate agent actually need an assistant? Was this particular real estate agent very busy, no matter what the market was doing, and they still needed help? Do you mind expanding on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I didn't, yeah, think about it at the time. I think she was kind of mainly looking for like administrative help. So I remember doing a lot of um, administrative tasks, just kind of helping with like filing, and more like office work. Um, so I think that was just kind of, she was looking to offload some of those tasks.
That makes sense. And curious about that story as well, too, Cecilia. Obviously, when you went into the market and you went in as an administrative assistant, you said it was kind of a glum time. How did you overcome that and still think that like real estate was a good market or a good thing for you to be interested in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you know, growing up, I always lived in apartments. My mom has never owned a property. But I had, just growing up and having, friends in school, I would see people um, that, their family, even just had, owned their single family home. So I think just kind of thinking about it from that perspective, it still appeared to me from like an outsider that like real estate was like the way to be financially secure and just be in general better off.
Nick, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh yeah. Well, before we forget, can we go to now? Let's talk about going to the Seattle days because I've been doing real estate for like 12 years now, and I remember when I got in, it was definitely slow. Things were starting to pick up a little bit around the country, but like that, I never really heard of like multiple offers on almost everything and things selling for over list price until I was selling real estate in Idaho, and you would just hear it from people on the western side of Washington. And curious, what was going on, if you remember, um, in Seattle that made that market so unique compared to the rest of the country?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess I can kind of talk about it just from the perspective of someone, looking for a place to relocate. I remember my husband and I, we were traveling and we were getting ready, we were traveling abroad and getting ready to come back to the US. And we were thinking about, areas we wanted to be, what city should we move back to? Where should we try to start our careers? And so we had kind of done some research and, we're trying to find areas where it was like the economy seemed good, like job opportunities seemed good. And, Seattle was definitely at that time kind of like top of those lists as far as like growing economy, jobs. So we were kind of looking at
Sure.
Seattle, and then
Okay,
another area that we were looking at was Austin, Texas, and ended up just kind of settling on Seattle. Just being from the West Coast, it seemed like it'd be a pretty easy move. So I think just like we were thinking about, as recent college grads, places that would be good areas to move and start a career. I would imagine it was just kind of that was kind of what was going on in Seattle at that time, and a lot of people kind of thinking the same thing.
so can you go in depth then on the house? How'd you find your house? How'd you fund it? And what did you end up doing to uh, make it a house hack?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were looking for, um, just from listening to podcasts and doing research, we knew that we kind of needed to find something like a property that needed work, whether that was like a single family or a duplex. And we had kind of started looking at single families like fixer uppers initially, and we had looked into doing like a rehab loan, and just kind of ran into some challenges with not being able to find like lenders that really knew a whole lot about that. And so
Yeah.
uh, yeah, we weren't able to kind of go down that route, but we were really wanting to find a duplex. And as I mentioned, it was kind of competitive. I mean, it seemed like like duplexes especially would get a lot of offers, and but we just kind of kept putting in offers. We found a great real estate agent that was just really patient and working with us. And to be honest, we just kind of got lucky. Sometimes you keep putting in offers, and for whatever reason the stars kind of align and your offer gets accepted, and the seller was willing to take an FHA offer. I mean, there was definitely some challenges with that particular property. It was on a septic system, so I think that kind of brought down the competition a little bit. And then as we were going through the escrow process, um, the septic system actually had failed, and so it was like this huge thing of where we had to. It took some extra time to close, and then my husband and I had to do some extra work that probably a buyer wouldn't normally do, but we really wanted the deal. We knew it was a great opportunity, and so we were. Typically the seller would probably be coordinating on, getting the septic fix and all that, and we were the ones coordinating all of that and doing whatever we could to get this to the finish line.
Okay, cool. So I have a lot more questions about this, and mostly because I feel like this is the best way for most people to start that are listening to this. So if you don't mind, I want to dive a little bit deeper. How'd you find this agent in the first place?
I believe just looking on Redfin,
Okay.
it was just like an agent through Redfin.
Okay. So you just picked somebody that was a face on an internet. on the internet that you can that would call you back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And she was ended up being an amazing agent. But yeah, I mean, at that time we didn't meet an agent through like a meetup or anything like that.
Okay, gotcha. So you just picked somebody, you got lucky. This person actually responded and helped you out. How many properties did you go walk through before you found that perfect duplex you wanted?
Gosh, I
If you
can't.
and I know this is a long time
Yeah.
ago, you probably don't remember, but if you had to guess.
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I know looking at multifamily, it's a little bit more difficult to sometimes get into the property. So I do know there was properties we were really interested in, put offers in on and hadn't seen yet because of it being a multifamily and
Yep,
already having tenants in place.
and that's common. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, on the number on that. I mean, we probably went to at least 10.
Do you remember how much time you spent looking for a property?
I would say at least 6 months. You mean from when we started looking to when we actually found something? Yeah.
Gotcha. So you took your time. Um, so this duplex, do you remember how much it cost?
It was 300,000.
Got it. So 300,000 and you're getting an FHA loan. So this means that with an FHA, for those that don't know, it's a government insured loan. That means that you don't have to put 20% down. You can bring 3.5% down. That's at least what you need to bring, unless the local county or state has some sort of extra incentive to help out even further than that. But traditionally, you're putting 3.5% down. So I'm going to guess 300,000. You had to come up with what, $12,000 in cash plus closing costs, or did you ask for closing costs from that seller?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was about, I don't remember if we asked for closing costs. We may have asked for like 2% or something like that. But I know what we brought in to be able to buy that deal was like between 12 and 15,000.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so you probably asked for some closing costs at that point because if you don't ask for closing costs, you're going to pay another 2 or 3% in that price range, which could have that would have been over 20 grand probably, or close to 20,000. So if you remember closer to 12, you probably got the seller to include some concessions. And obviously, it didn't go perfect. It had a septic system. It failed. You guys got it figured out, though. Do you remember what your payment was? And did this already have tenants in place, or was it vacant?
It had one tenant in place, and then we were moving into the unoccupied side. And so it had one tenant in place that had been there for a really long time. So the rents were low. I can't remember what our initial payment was. Um, Gosh, yeah, I just cannot remember at all.
I'm gonna guess 1800 dollars.
I think it was lower than that,
Okay, guess it depends on the interest rate.
but yeah, maybe between 1,300 and 1,500. But I
Oh,
can't
that
remember
low.
exact.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly.
Do you remember how much the market rents were for the other duplex side? And I know you said it was low. Did you ever up the rents or get a new tenant?
We did increase the rents, and I do remember, I'll never forget closing on the property and kind of my husband and I were moving in, and I went over to the tenant next door because, of course, we knew that we would have to increase the rent for it to make sense, and we weren't even going up to market rents, which, um, gosh, I'm trying to remember. I should have come more prepared with these numbers, but um,
No, it's all
It's
good.
okay. I know I'm trying to extract your memory from 8 or 9 years ago.
yeah.
So audience out there, bear with us. She wasn't anticipating these questions.
No worries, but yeah, so we wanted to, get the rent up, but not, totally to market rent, because the tenant had been there a long time, and the unit was also, I want to say that the tenant had been there maybe 15 or 20 years at the time that we bought it, and the unit was really in kind of like its original condition. It was like a 1968, I believe, property, so not updated. But I remember going over to the tenant to talk to her about the rent increase, and I was just so nervous. I was like literally like just shaking, like thinking about having to like increase the rent and like this lady being upset or whatnot. But that's what you got to do. So We did increase the rent, and she was happy to just be able to stay at the time. She wasn't sure, what the new owner was going to do. Yeah, that's what we did with that property when we.
Do you remember what you increased the rents to?
I want to say we increased the rents to 11.45 or like 11.25, something around there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you're doing your own property management, so I mean that purely just goes towards paying your mortgage. So do you remember what you had to come up with every month? Was it $400 or something?
Yeah, it was something low. Yeah, like $500 or something. So
Yeah,
that, of course, to us, that was, amazing to just be able to um,
yeah,
live somewhere for, that amount.
in Seattle.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, that's really good. Question for you, Cecilia, about this property too. So obviously, when you had the tenant, did the tenant next door, do you know that you were the new owner? Did you just introduce yourself as a property manager instead?
Yeah, that's a great question. We did introduce ourselves as the owner. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know that I would do that if I was going to house hack that way today. But that's what we did at the time.
And I know a couple of other house hackers who have done the exact same thing. You know, they went next door, they said, "Hey, I'm the new owner of the property," and I see the intent behind it, but like knowing what I know today, I'm like, I think I would just introduce myself as like, "Hey, I'm managing the property. You know, I'm here to help." That way, it kind of takes the pain of you increasing the rents off your shoulders and puts it on this mysterious force. So.
Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm the manager. I'm here to help ruin your life and increase your rent.
But you were doing a nice thing, right? You didn't even increase them to market rents or anything like that, and you wanted her to stay because she'd obviously been a longtime tenant, and that's how you create really good relationships too. So props to you on that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So what was next for you?
So after that, we wanted to house hack again. So we were definitely, that first duplex went really well as far as just being able to have something and have like a low housing expense and be able to have a property. And we wanted to continue doing that. So we were after about a year, we were kind of maybe even less than a year, we were starting to look again and try to find opportunities where we could house hack like a 2 to 4 unit again. But at the same time, housing costs in Seattle was just continuing to go up, continuing to be more competitive. So we were putting in offers on duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, and it just not getting anything accepted. But we wanted to continue growing our portfolio. And so our next property ended up being like a single family, kind of like a long term live in flip. So we found a single family home in a really great neighborhood that needed work. And again, kind of same thing, just kind of got lucky. This seller was listing their home like the week of Thanksgiving. I think no one else was paying attention. And so we were able to get a great opportunity with that. And that was our next property.
Okay. And did you keep that duplex?
We kept that duplex at the time. We did end up selling it later on, a few years later, to be able to buy a larger multifamily. But at that time, we just kind of got another tenant in there, moved to that single family home, and kept the duplex.
Okay. But when you moved out of it, do you remember how much you rented the other side for?
Between 13 and 1400, somewhere in there.
All right. So this is pretty cool. So, from what you're saying, you move out after only a year goes by, you have enough cash flow to get all your initial investment back. And then you just have, the $1,000 a month at least coming in off this duplex that you basically got for free. And you got to live in at a huge discount compared to the market. So did you kind of, the next house that you got into, do you remember what your payment was on that?
Around between 2000 and 2100, and I remember like at the time thinking, oh my god, this is crazy, like our housing cost is like $500 right now, and we're gonna go and pay
Yeah.
2100, and it was like felt like quite a jump at the time for sure. And yeah, I definitely remember thinking that.
Yeah. But it's probably a lot easier to stomach knowing that you have a little, over $1,000 extra coming in off this duplex you just moved out of. So you could basically subtract some of that from your current payment. And then it's like, you're living in a house for less than what you can just go rent something for if you figure all that in. And it just really helps you build momentum in life as you just go from the next property to the next and continue to keep properties that cash flow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we did, again, a low down payment option on that single family house that we got. And we knew it was in a great area and there was a lot of upside. So it definitely still made sense.
Okay, so how long did you live in this next house?
We lived in the next house until we moved to Spokane. So I think that was about 4 years. Again, kind of same initial aspirations. We wanted to move again and find another house hack, but the market in Seattle just continued to, get more competitive, more expensive. And so from there, we kind of, our next purchases after that were out of area or out of state.
Cool. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think we were starting to get some momentum with real estate investing, and at that time, so we bought this single family home kind of end of 2016, and we were kind of thinking that we wanted to, try to buy a property every year. So in 2017, we were kind of, still looking in Seattle, still putting in offers, and just weren't getting anywhere. So all of 2017 went by, weren't able to get a property in the Seattle area, and we're kind of frustrated by that, and definitely started looking at what other options to be able to keep investing and keep growing our portfolio. And we found out about well, we started looking into out of state markets, and then in 2018 we found out about Jennifer Beatles. She at that time still lived in the Seattle area and was doing also kind of like a meetup locally and talking more about like out of area investing. And so we were going to those meetups starting in 2018. And then that's when we were able to kind of pick back up again. We bought a couple duplexes out of state in the Atlanta area. So those were kind of our next purchases. And then, yeah, just kind of continued investing outside of Seattle from there.
Okay. So what made you want to invest in Atlanta? What kind of research were you doing, and what was that journey looking like as far as, you're not moving into a house this time, so I'm imagining you need more cash involved, right? Because you're not getting a low down government type of loan with these, or maybe you did something creative. Tell us about that.
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. So we did not do anything creative, and it was like the most money down on a property that we, ever had to come up with at that point. So yeah, I think it's like for a duplex on conventional financing, you need to put 25% down. The first duplex that we bought was I think 205,000, so that's like $50,000 plus closing costs. I think we had to bring in 55 or $58,000, something like that, to be able to get the deal. So yeah, it was definitely a lot more than we were used to coming up with, and it took us. I mean, we were pretty frugal. We were both working W-2 jobs at the time, so we were just saving as much as we could to be able to do that. But after we bought that first out-of-state duplex where it wasn't owner-occupied, we definitely realized like we are going to have to do something a little more creative if we're going to if we're going to continue growing. Otherwise, this is definitely going to be just kind of a slow journey. But as far as getting into out-of-state investing, my husband is actually from the Atlanta area originally, so we kind of knew a little bit about the area, and we were looking for investment properties in Atlanta, and we had kind of done the same thing we did before when we were investing in Seattle, as far as finding an agent, just kind of like contacted some agents online, and it didn't work out as well as it did when we first did that. And so we were working with some like not really investor savvy agents, and we're putting in offers, but like really not getting anywhere, and also feeling like, there was something missing. So we were kind of looking on our own in the Atlanta market, and then found Jennifer Beatles, looked into some other out of state markets, and we're making offers in other markets, but weren't able to actually get traction and buy something in the Atlanta area until we met an investor savvy agent in Atlanta through Jennifer Beatles in Seattle.
Nice.
Got it. So, at the beginning of this, you said, you bought your first non-creative deal, traditional financing, 25% down, and yeah, I know what that feels like too. I've mostly been a creative kind of investor most of my career, but I remember the first time I bought just a traditional it was a new construction house. Put my 25% down. It was like 60 grand out of my account. And I was just, something just inside me just thought I was crazy for doing this. But then it just turned out to be the easiest investment ever. There's nothing creative about it. And you get what you pay for sometimes, because I didn't have to go fix up a property that took 6 months to a year. And I didn't have to do anything creative with a weirdo, some weirdo seller where I let him stay in the house forever. I think, traditional investing sometimes in the creative world gets looked at with a bad rep, but it's just another way of doing things. And I feel like what I've learned as an investor is like, you get what you pay for. And sometimes you just put a down payment on a property, make it easy. It becomes easy, and it was easy to rent. Didn't have to do a thing. It appreciated like in 1 year. And I know this is not normal, but like in 1 year, it appreciated like 60 grand. So I was able to get my investment back, plus that, plus more. So anyway, just wanted to say kudos for just doing a traditional deal. It's not easy when you first start off and it's low down, you move into it and you just feel like you have to be creative, or you have to get this 80% returns or 100% infinite returns. But it's not the worst thing, right?
Yeah, that's a great call out. And I think especially, getting started in out of state investing, that's not a bad stepping stone either, is to just kind of do something where you're getting into the market, kind of just doing a traditional or conventional, path. And then, you're always going to learn something from, any deal you're doing, and then, maybe be able to build up from there. So yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure I hit on this while we're actually on this subject. So, Cecilia, obviously, on your first out of state deals where you go into Atlanta and all these other places, and you talked about bringing this down payment, did you utilize any equity or utilize any of your other properties to come up with that down payment, or was that just working hard and grit through your W 2 jobs?
Yeah, for that for particular first duplex in Atlanta, it was just working hard and saving our money. We did kind of after that start being a little bit more creative and leveraging existing equity through HELOCs, but for that particular first one, it was just kind of savings.
And then with your first duplexes down there, like, do you remember what the rents were when you got it? And did you do any value add solutions? Like, how did you end up making that deal a deal so it makes sense for you to keep?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what were the rents? I want to say um, the rents were maybe like 950 when we bought that duplex, and we did increase the rents. I mean, they weren't a whole lot under market, but I think we brought them up to maybe like around 1100. We It was more of a turnkey property. Kind of Nick, like you were saying, it wasn't something where we had to do a whole lot of renovations or anything like that. It was more or less turnkey. There was some initial, minor repairs to do, but that was just kind of pretty much a more or less stabilized, nothing fancy property. We just kind of increased the rents a little bit when we bought it.
That's awesome. And just going forward on that a little bit, so obviously you got those ones and you have your other Seattle properties. In your experience up to that point, did you enjoy investing in state or did you enjoy investing out of state more once you figured that out?
I think at that point, we just liked growing the portfolio. So as long as we were able to find opportunities in good areas, we were pretty happy with that. I think that was kind of the last deal we did that I would consider like not a value add. Everything we've done since then. So the next duplex we bought in Atlanta was like a heavy value add, full renovation, and that's when we kind of started to learn. I mean, I think definitely a challenge for us with out of state investing, is my husband and I are both like kind of like control freaks, and we want to like know everything is like going smoothly. And so I think managing renovations out of state is a bit of a challenge for us. I think from that perspective, we do kind of prefer to invest locally, but at the same time, it has to make sense.
Awesome. Anything you want to add on that, Nick?
Yeah, just I mean, renovating a property in state and close to you is tough enough. So, I mean, for those out there that are new to this and they think they want to like, take on fixer uppers out of the area, just take baby steps because you're going to regret it. Um, but yeah, no, you make a good point. Just nobody's good at out of state, fixer uppers. So don't try to be that one person.
Right. And obviously at that point you started getting your team together and in these out of state properties, right? So I imagine you got your real estate agent. Did you end up getting a contractor out there, or were you doing the own work yourself?
Yes, we did have a contractor out there that we met through our property manager. And so they were kind of, yeah, manage the renovations on that. That would be the second duplex that we got in Atlanta.
Gotcha. And then once you got those all stabilized, what was your next play after that? What did you do?
So after that, so the second duplex we got in Atlanta, that was kind of our first like BRRRR project, and where we bought the property. It needed a lot of work. We did the full renovation and then rented out the units and then did that cash out refinance. And so after that, we were definitely, pretty focused on, it was just a lot faster, that process of being able to add the value and then get your initial investment back out is way faster than, how long it takes us to save the 25% down to be able to buy properties that way. So from that point on, have pretty much been focused on doing only value add or like the BRRRR method.
I'm a huge fan of the Burr method too. Did you run into any challenges doing this method, or did it go smoothly for you?
Yeah, we definitely ran into challenges. I think everybody knows who does the BRRRR is, your biggest challenge is going to be, the appraisal. Is it actually, going to appraise, for what you need it to be able to get that initial investment out. And so that was definitely a challenge for us. I think we did that second Atlanta duplex. We bought another Atlanta duplex that was also a BRRRR, and then we had bought a triplex in Spokane, also doing like the BRRRR strategy. And appraisals were definitely an issue for us. Sometimes with some of those properties, we had to do an appraisal and just kind of do the initial refinance and get whatever we could out, and then refinance again like a year later when there was better comps and that kind of thing. So yeah, the BRRRR is definitely there's hiccups and challenges along the way, and it's not a guaranteed it's not an immediate guarantee for sure.
Yeah, but Cecilia, you make a really good point. Like, a lot of people they don't realize this until they can start doing it themselves. But like, you're always selling to somebody in real estate, and when you're doing the BRRRR, your your biggest buyer is that appraiser. So you got to impress that appraiser. Um, Now a lot of it's out of your control because you just got to go off the comps, or they have to go off the comps. But you still have a lot of sway with how your property ends up ranking when it comes to condition and how they feel like how the property presents itself. So it's got to be, if you want a high appraisal, it's got to be a high quality type renovation. There's still, you can't just rely on the comps because you're still selling to somebody, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. So going forward with that, obviously, you told us you did some new construction as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, still in the beginning stages of that, and I guess so in between those, the duplexes and the triplexes we bought, we did kind of transition into a little bit larger multifamily. So we bought a 6 unit apartment building in Spokane and then a 9 unit apartment building in Spokane that were both kind of value add projects, doing, kind of the BRRRR on sort of a larger scale, and just kind of a longer timeline with those kind of bigger properties. And so we were doing that for a couple years, I think between like 2019 and 2021. And we had some good, opportunities doing that. And since then, it's definitely been a challenge to find more multifamily value add projects. And so that's kind of sort of what has got us looking into doing new construction with small multifamily. And Nick, I think I've heard you talk about this as far as like getting into new construction because you couldn't find good flips. It's kind of a similar pivot for us as far as, not being able to find good like apartment flips essentially, and looking to see if new construction and just building our own multifamily is like a solve to that. It's definitely been interesting. I definitely appreciate you, Nick, sitting down and kind of walking us through what your experience has been. And unfortunately, everything you've
Of
said has been
course.
right. Things are taking way longer and seeming to cost way more than initially anticipated. So we're still, kind of in the early.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, truth.
I'd
Yeah,
rather
well,
someone be
Yeah.
the bearer of bad news and then me get into something that I have no idea about, right? Like obviously Nick can be a beacon for experience when it comes to new new construction. So yeah, it's definitely good to learn from the people who've had success and the people who've struggled from it, and that's how we learn going forward on this kind of stuff. So
Yeah. And before we get too far ahead, I want to jump back to the appraiser thing. Sorry, I totally forgot to say the biggest point that I was actually going with, and then I just stopped talking. But when it comes to the appraiser, the reason why a lot of people have difficulties with the appraisal is because, and a lot of people don't actually know this, when you're going to refinance, um, the appraiser doesn't have a number to go off of. They are just given it, they're just putting something conservative down on paper. But when you actually meet up with the appraiser at the house, tell them what you did to the property and tell them what you were anticipating um, the appraisal amount to be, you'd be amazed by how much sway that actually has in the long run, because then they have a number to go off of. Because whenever you're purchasing a house, an appraiser, uh, they almost always magically get right. Oh, it appraises right at that purchase price,
weird.
because then they have something to go off of. They're trying to bracket and trying to support this value. In a refinance, the appraiser has nothing to go off of, so they're just going to do their best to not sound too stupid and being conservative. So that's why sometimes these appraisal numbers can seem really low, because they have nothing to go off of and they don't want to come off too high. But if you can meet an appraiser at a property and tell them what you did and what you were hoping for based off these comps that you looked at, and you do a lot of the homework for them, and you're well prepared and informative, they'll most of them will gladly take your information and run with it, because you're doing half their job. Um, so just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry, I totally forgot to mention that, and we can get back on to the new construction topic.
Well, I totally agree with that, Nick. And after a couple bad appraisals, we definitely started putting like more effort into our preparing for an appraisal. We would put together these property profiles that would show like before photos, before rents, after rents, all of our scope of work. Include our comps we found on our own, and then include like a targeted value that we were shooting for, and then meeting with the appraiser as well, and that definitely increased our success with the appraisals for sure. So that's a great point.
So you went the extra step. That's cool. Kudos to you.
Yeah, I think that's really cool.
So tell us about this new construction project, and why is it not going magically?
Well, so we bought, so we were looking for another apartment project for probably a year and a half, and it's just everything. I think multifamily prices are just really high right now. I mean, it's crazy what people are paying for multifamily, and so the numbers just weren't working for on what we've seen for existing apartment buildings that we could kind of renovate. So we ended up buying a tear down lot at the end of 2022, and it's got like a burned house on it. So the next, kind of immediate steps that we have to do is be able to tear that house down, and then work on getting permits to be able to build the fourplex. So there's just been a lot of different challenges. I mean, just trying to get the house torn down has taken a long time. We still have not done that, and it's been, I think, like 4 months since we purchased the property. Just the process has taken longer to get the permit with the city to do the tear down. And then there's some trees on the property that need to be cut down, and additional kind of timing with that, as far as getting the right approvals from the city. And then just construction bids have been high on the numbers that we're getting back. And then in the city of Spokane specifically, the city council is looking at significantly increasing some of the utility hookup fees. So that's just been kind of another unexpected cost that we have to kind of add into the numbers. So yeah, just kind of a lot of different things, a lot of like lessons learned and along the way, and we haven't even like really, we're still like in really early stages. So definitely been a learning curve for sure.
Yeah, so it sounds like the lot hasn't even been prepped yet. There's still a house sitting there, and just 4 months of due diligence and getting bids and trying to get permits, and that's why decided to go back to just flipping houses, because the amount of work and time involved in new construction, just to be able to have an excavator there before, all the, like, it seems like there's months. I mean, there is months of work before you ever can, shovel out the ground and
Right.
prep for actual foundation. Once you finally get to the point, 6 months down the road where you've put drywall in, then it's a different story. Then it's just like flipping houses, at that point. But there's so much more to it than that. So I mean, yeah, it's tough for those out there that haven't done it before. Just really, the biggest thing I learned was, if I can go back and do it again, I would have partnered with somebody who has done it before, um, and somebody that has done every step before. That someone that has good systems in place, and have a lot more cash in reserves.
That's good. And Cecilia, real quick on those on that commercial or on that new construction you're building, are you building that on a hard money loan? You building it on a construction loan? Like, how'd you get funding for that?
So we have not gotten funding for that yet. We're definitely just kind of keeping a close eye on the market and the costs before we actually pull the trigger and move forward. But our plan would be to get like a just kind of go through a local bank and get a construction to permanent loan on that. And yeah.
Very cool. And in your experience so far, I know you've done some residential and some commercial with your 6 and 9 units. What has been the easiest way to get a loan? Has it been easier to get a commercial loan, or is it easier to get a residential loan, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think everything is hard in my experience, except for I.
Quote of the day.
Oh my god, this is the best quote. I think everything is hard. I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, I mean that's the reality, but I do have a W-2 job, so that has made it easier, I think, to just be able to get those like conventional 1 to 4 loans. Um, yeah, so from that perspective, I think those have been a little easier for me.
That's awesome. And just going forward, I know we're getting close to the hour mark here, and we still have a lot to cover. But this has been a really cool conversation. So you've done a couple Airbnbs and stuff too. Can you tell us a little bit about your strategy with that and how well that's played into your system?
Yeah, absolutely. So our first Airbnb was kind of a sort of like an accidental or maybe like a forced Airbnb situation. So that second duplex I mentioned that we bought in the Atlanta area, it was so it was a deal that we found through a wholesaler. Like I mentioned, it needed a heavy renovation. It was good location, but the property, so it was a duplex and both sides are 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and pretty small units, almost like a studio size, about 500 square feet. And so we had initially just kind of done the renovation and then had a property manager just kind of manage the units and rent them out to regular long-term tenants. And what we were finding on that is that because the units were so small, the people that were renting them were moving out after a year, just kind of like a temporary place to live. And that definitely was kind of killing the numbers. I mean, if you have a tenant moving out every year, and then our property manager charges a 1 month leasing fee, and then you're going to have time in between tenants. I mean, you could be looking at like 2 months of vacancy per unit essentially. And so we were just seeing that that just wasn't really going to cash flow. But the property was in a good location, near hospitals, near kind of like the downtown area of this particular suburb. So we thought it could be a good Airbnb opportunity. So my husband flew out there and furnished the units after the last tenants had moved out. And then we got that property up on Airbnb. And we were kind of managing it out of state. And we initially started doing just kind of regular Airbnb, people coming for, I don't know, anywhere from 2 days to a couple weeks. And that was definitely challenging to manage that kind of turnover. from a distance. So after a couple months, we um, set our minimum days to like 30 days on Airbnb and have just kind of been running that property as more of like a midterm rental since then. And that's been working out really well. We get a lot of travel nurses or people relocating to the area. So we're dealing with turnover, much, every couple months or so. But yeah, that's been working pretty well for that property.
So, Cecilia, I want to ask you a little bit about the furnishing process. So, you mentioned your husband flew out there, got it furnished. Um, what did that entail, and how long was he out there? And I mean, is your husband pretty good at design? Um, did he have to put all this furniture together himself, or like what? Can you go into depth on how long that took him, how much it was, and um, did it turn out looking as good as maybe a woman's touch?
Oh
um,
gosh, I'm not very good at design either. So,
okay.
but I can't remember exactly how long he was out there, but kind of all the things you're mentioning. I mean, yeah, he went out there probably for maybe 2 weeks and, was pretty much just like assembling IKEA furniture, many trips to like Target, Walmart, IKEA, like
Hmm.
getting, there's just so much that goes into furnishing an Airbnb that you don't think about, all these little things. So it was definitely a project.
I think it's really underplayed
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
because I've furnished so many houses now. Just thinking back, like the amount of time it takes just to put a dresser together. I mean, in that same time, you can have contractors put up a wall,
Right.
on a house. It's amazing how long it takes to furnish a house and put furniture together and get it just right. Keep in mind, guys, her husband flew out with the only purpose to furnish a house, and it still took him 2 full weeks, right? It takes imagine how long it takes if this Airbnb is just down the block and you get to it when you can. It could take a month. um, anyway, just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Do you have a manager for that Airbnb right now, or do you self-manage it?
Yeah, we continue to self-manage it. I think with the lower turnover, it's been manageable for us. And whenever I get pricing for short-term rental management, it just kind of kills the cash flow. So, yeah, it hasn't been too bad for us to self-manage.
And just curious, like if obviously one of your beds break in this unit, like what is your plan for that? Are you gonna have to fly back out to get that bed fixed, or do you have somebody out there who can do that for you?
Yeah, we do have like a handyman that we use out there, and then we have a cleaner, and then Joe's from Atlanta, so he does have family in the area, so that's always kind of an emergency yeah, plan if we have to beg Joe's family to help us.
There you go. Yeah, as long as you have like a way to, make those things work so you don't have to fly out there every single time a lamp breaks or something like that, that would just be awful.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And just real quick, I do want to touch Cecilia. Like, what's your plan going forward? So I know like you've done a lot of cool projects. It sounds like you've done a lot of slow and steady building, which is super great because I think it's the best way to do this in real estate, not to get over leveraged or shoot for these crazy projects that you don't think you can do. It sounds like you've just had really steady growth, and that's something that I think is a good takeaway for a lot of investors. You don't have to, like what Nick was saying earlier, like these all don't have to be the biggest home run deals you've ever had. What do you think the key to your success has been with that?
Yeah, I think we've definitely been, like you said, slow and steady. We're also just generally pretty conservative. And sometimes it feels like we're not doing anything because everything we're analyzing just isn't making sense. Yeah, I mean, that can definitely also be a challenge. But yeah, just kind of sticking to the fundamentals and sticking to our criteria and not, jumping on things that are outside of that. I think, looking forward, we are kind of trying to figure out like what makes sense in the current market, not being able to find the value add apartment projects that we wanted to continue doing. So we're, it's going to see how new development works and if that, ends up making sense to, try to build multifamily or apartments. We're also looking at going back to doing more out of state investing. So we're just, still kind of trying to stick to our criteria and, only, buying things that make sense, even if it takes a long time to find something.
Sure. You got to buy logically, not emotionally with this stuff. That makes 100% sense to me. Real quick, this is kind of a sidewinder from where we're at right now in the conversation, but I want to talk about your Jennifer Beatles mastermind, and I want to talk about the importance of attending REI meetups. How well do you think that's been, and how great do you think that's been for all your business and for all your things you're working on?
Yeah, I would definitely say that that has been like a key to success is just surrounding yourself with people that are doing what you want to do and living the life that you want to live. I think that has been critical. And I'm pretty shy and introverted, so I go to meetups and I'll like sit in the back of the room, but I'm still like absorbing the information, being around people that are doing what I want to do. And I think that's definitely made all the difference, especially when there's challenges. It's great to be around people that are have worked through those challenges, still have a positive attitude. Yeah, I think that's definitely been key.
Awesome. Community is definitely key. And speaking of community, I did want to touch on your Invest Her meetups that you are now hosting now. Nick and I are definitely not allowed at these, but can you talk about those a little bit and how cool those have been to get started?
Yeah, so the Investor group has been awesome. I've been following the Investor. They started out with a podcast a few years ago, and now the podcast is affiliated with Bigger Pockets. So it's just an awesome community that kind of focuses on empowering women investors to live a financially free and balanced life. And it definitely wasn't my idea to start the group. Like I mentioned, I'm pretty introverted. But an investor that I had known from Seattle when I was actually that I met through Jennifer Beatles groups. We used to go to those meetups together in Seattle. Emily Silcock, it was her idea to start the meetup, and she asked me if I would co-host. And of course,
Okay.
yeah, it was a no-brainer because I just love the community, and it's been really great to just be able to support women locally. So definitely want to invite any ladies in Spokane or Coeur d'Alene to join us. We meet monthly on the second Tuesdays of the month from 5:30 to 7:30 at the 4 Degrees office in Spokane. And we have information on meetup.com. We also have a Facebook group, or can reach out to me if you'd like more information as well. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Nick, any final thoughts before we start getting into the wind down?
Well, I just got to commend you because as a fellow shy introverted person, starting a meetup group is, it was one of the toughest things I ever had to do personally, or mentally, just to get past the idea of actually getting up and talking in front of people. So, it's I feel you, but it certainly has helped my growth and being able to be a little bit more confident and talk to people just by doing it consistently every month. So hopefully you keep it up and get that shy awkwardness out of you.
Yeah, hopefully I could be like you one day, Nick.
Oh yeah, right.
So
But thanks.
66% of the people here have a real estate meetup right now. It's funny because I'm not shy or introverted. I don't own a meetup. I do enjoy coming to them though, but I still like learning from you guys, and it's been great to follow along with everyone's journey. Yeah, so Cecilia, definitely thank you so much for joining us on the Investor Shed today. We really appreciate it. I've got a lot of knowledge out of this. This has just been a really cool conversation to have with you. Before we go though, we are going to wind down with just some predetermined questions that you obviously know about. The first one is, if you had one business or investing book you recommend every single investor read, what would that be?
I would say The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. I think mindset is absolutely critical. So I would definitely recommend everybody check that out.
Next question is, if you were given $30 million gifted to one of your bank accounts, what's the first thing you would spend it on?
I would definitely go on like a 1 year around the world trip. And actually, I want to know what you
Hmm.
guys' answers would be.
Good, good. Interesting. We've
Mine
never been
changes
asked
every
this.
week.
Yeah, yeah. Nick's changes every week. I know I would like $30 million to me is an unfathomable amount of money, right? Like I could live off 2 million of that for almost the rest of my life without having to do anything else. The rest of it, obviously, I would put it into investing and building my own portfolio, and some very, very, very passive stuff where I don't have to touch it, and my 6 to 7% just comes in. I'd be a-okay with that.
I'd probably just take care of my friends and family and then just continue to make stupid videos with Jeremy.
That's good. Yeah, yeah. We need to buy more video effects
Maybe
for
ramp them
sure.
up.
That's awesome.
Did you give your answer on that, Cecilia?
Oh, so I would go on a 1 year round the world trip. That would be the first thing.
Yeah,
That's right. Okay, yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
Jeremy.
I'm sorry. She asked me and she threw me off my entire whole gig.
She threw me off too. I almost forgot.
I love it. That's a good answer, though.
Trip around the world.
Yeah. Trip around the world. I love it. So, what advice would you give to newer investors looking to get started on their first or second deal?
I would definitely say to kind of start with the end in mind and just make sure you're clear about what you're actually trying to achieve, what you want your life to look like, and kind of work backwards from there so that you know that, whether you're looking for your first deal, your second deal, your fifth deal, you know that what you're looking for is actually going to help you get to where you want to go. So I would start with that.
Awesome. I love that a lot. That's really good. Next question for you is, how do you define success?
I define success by, I don't know, I guess being able to live the life I want, which for me would be, kind of not working too much, and being able to make fun memories with people I care about.
I love it. That's great. And then when you're not investing, what do you like to do with your free time?
I love to travel, go to concerts, eat out at restaurants, and spend time with the goats and alpacas that I have at my hobby farm.
Oh,
love
nice.
Where's your alpaca farm at, by the way?
It's at my home in Spokane, so we have a little hobby farm here, and then we have the ADU that we rent out on Airbnb. So it's kind of like we call it a farm hack. It's kind of like
Okay, nice.
yeah, it's like a dream house hack for us. So it's been super fun to have the animals and then, still be able to generate some income. And guests always love seeing the animals too. So that's been super fun.
I love that. I want to come
Oh,
hang out
man.
with alpacas and goats. Nick, do we want to stay at her Airbnb?
I was just thinking that's such a good idea.
Yeah.
So I had this real estate deal that I think is falling apart yesterday, and it's a house on acres. So I'm like, man, maybe I just keep it as an Airbnb. But man, if I could just get some alpacas up there, maybe I'll get bookings.
Alpacas
Yeah,
get bookings. You
people-
heard it here first, everybody. I love it. One final question for Cecilia. Where can people find out more information about you or your investor meetup or whatever you're doing?
Yeah, I'm not super active on social media, but people can definitely connect with me on Facebook, just under Cecilia Boswell. And then more information for my meetup is on meetup.com. If you search Spokane Investor, it should pop up.
Perfect. Well, Cecilia, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge
Yeah,
and
thank you.
being here and talking to everybody. We certainly appreciate what you do, and thank you for just kind of heading up the investor community. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
I know a lot of women in my office go to it, and they certainly appreciate it. So, thanks for everything you do.
We get to live vicariously through it, so it's nice.
Yeah. I wish someday they would have like an exclusive club for white men. Just kidding.
Yeah, sorry, we're out of luck there. There's definitely none of them.
Oh, I guess there's none of those. Just joking.
Oh, I love
That's
it.
totally joking, everybody. Calm down. Have a great day. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.